everyone, welcome to another episode of our Wellness Exchange series. My name is Diana Hualpa with the Hidalgo County Wellness Program, and today I'm here with Dr. Andie Gonzalez from HEB Nutrition Services. Hi Andie, how are you doing today?
Good, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. So let's start. What is nutrition services and what exactly a dietitian do?
Yeah, so I get to help support our HEB Nutrition Services program. We're a team of 50 plus dietitians servicing across the state. Mm-hmm. Specifically to the Rio Grande Valley, we have 6 dietitians that are supporting our wellness programs. Mm-hmm. And thank you for asking about what a dietitian does. It's something that I'm super passionate about. I am a registered dietitian, mm-hmm. but I help support our team more from a support system right now. Dietitians, what they do is that they help our community, our customers, our patients identify their nutritional needs and create a wellness plan to be able to help increase that quality of life.
And for example, for someone that is just starting to take the first steps towards a healthy lifestyle, how can a dietitian help, or what would you advise for those patients?
Yes, I think the first step is just setting up an appointment. I think that is a big step for a lot of people in our community. The role that the dietitian is really to be able to create and provide that support system. And so, when getting ready to set up an appointment, what I would advise, especially if you have goals in mind, take those with you. If you're already maybe facing some health challenges, make sure that you include that in your plan so that when you meet with the dietitian, that you could be able to share with her those things so that she can create a very personalized, individualized nutrition plan to really help support their wellness goals. Specifically to HEB Nutrition Services, they can visit us on .com or they can call us directly to be able to set up an appointment.
That's great, and I like that you mentioned how setting up an appointment is the first step, because it is intimidating. It is already intimidating to go to a regular PCP and then also to go to a dietitian or nutrition services. So definitely that's something that we need to create a little bit more awareness and more education that it's okay to ask for help, right?
Yes, and the really great thing that I'm, as a registered dietitian, as I mentioned, and I have a lot of colleagues at HEB and then also in the community, is that we're really passionate about helping. Mm-hmm. And so our goal is to really just be able to be that support system. And I think that is a big component of, being able to connect with our community and just really showing them like, hey, we care. Mm-hmm. We're not the food police. We want to be able to support you in any wellness journey. And I think that is something that I can see across all dietitians in the Valley.
Well, that's great to hear. And there is a misconception that eating healthy is expensive. Would you be able to elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes, I think when customers or patients approach us about that specific concern, I always share that there's different strategies that you can put in place to help you save. Mm-hmm. And I'm very frugal, and they say that any person, whatever income level, they're always looking at price and just really a way to save. And there's some components that we always like to recommend, like always choosing things that are seasonal are really going to help, save a little bit of money, especially when it comes to produce and vegetables. But then aside from that, I always say that there's a lot of great promotions across our store. And I think that is really key too. There's a lot of different venues, like whether it's our circular or that ad that you might find in store. Mm-hmm. Now we have an app where you can download, and be able to have some additional savings when it comes to coupons. But I'm also going to be transparent, Diana, because I think it's important also to share that sometimes it is going to cost a little bit more. It is. I mean, we see it, day in and day out, as far as being able to implement maybe some of these healthy changes, but at the end result is that you're going to help save a lot more, and that's an additional 1 or 2 years of your life, and that is so invaluable, right? And I think that there's, I always tell patients, don't focus on the now, focus on the big picture. What's that going to do for you in 10 years? And I think that is a very crucial conversation that we need to have.
Yes, definitely. And see it as an investment. You're investing in your health. You're investing in your body, right? So definitely that's something that we need to start changing a little bit the mindset that, yes, it might be a little bit more expensive right now, but maybe at the end of the day, we don't need to pay for that hospital stay or for that urgent care visit, etc., right?
Exactly.
It's something that we definitely need to start investing right now.
And our bodies wonder us. it helps us get up every morning, right? And so I always say, like, we have to take care of our bodies, and one way that we need to make sure we do that is just fueling it with the proper things that it needs to be able to function the way that it needs to. And so I hear you, Dana. I think that, it's just really around, how do I just be better? How do I show up, be better? And these things could really help people just live more of a quality of life.
Do you have any key recommendations for what type of food they need to eat, or maybe water intake?
Yeah, so as far as a general rule, I mentioned earlier that, nutrition is so individualized, but as a general rule, as registered dietitians, one thing that we do follow is the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. We do encourage the MITE plate method, meaning that we're going to encourage more fruits and vegetables when it comes to just your plate, right? Making sure that you're getting more of those nutrients and those vitamins, right, to ensure that it's going to help protect your overall health. And then aside from that, like lean sources of protein, healthy fats. And then, I am going to say that with our community, a question that we often get is around carbohydrates, right? So we are, really conscious about how carbohydrates can fit on our plate. But what we like to mention is that, overall balance is going to be key, portions, and then frequency. Right? I think those are two big messages that I think are really important with our community, because we do feel like all food can fit. It's just a matter of paying attention to portion and frequency.
Would you be able to elaborate a little bit more on portion control? Because I agree with you. It's key that we target portion control.
Yes, no, for sure. So, I think the biggest visual that I like to, give, right, even if it's just using my hands, is that when we think about protein, for example, right, whether it's like breakfast, lunch, or dinner, the serving size is usually, around 3 to 4 ounces, right? So if you think about, when you go out to eat, or maybe you're preparing food at home, which we highly encourage, is that it's the size of the palm of your hand, right? And so you start to think about, okay, if I'm going out to eat, or maybe if I'm cooking at my house, right, is it that size, right? And oftentimes it might be a little bit bigger, right? And so the idea is that, like, we use, just visuals to really understand, like, what that portion should be, which is about 3 to 4 ounces is the general guideline, right? And then, you start to think about even like, okay, well, if I don't have that, right, like, how do I start to incorporate some of these healthy changes? And that's why I say, our dietitians can be a really good support system when it comes to, like, portion control and just really understanding, the way things look, right, and how they should fit in your plate. The other key one is, like, usually, the size of an apple, for example. We always say that it should be, about the size of your palm of your hand, and the fist, and that, like, there's apples that are 2 or 3 times
super
that
huge,
size,
yes.
right? And so it just starts to put things into perspective, like, oh wait, well, this is the size, so then maybe I choose a smaller apple, or maybe now I cut it and save it for later, or maybe I share it with somebody else, right, in the family. And so I think it starts to develop those healthy changes, and those small steps really can lead to, like, these powerful big changes overall long term.
Yes, definitely. And you did mention that it's highly recommended to cook at home, make sure that we eat our food. But there's also some times where we do need to go out for lunch and dinner. So do you have any tips whenever we go outside?
Yes, and I think that we have a lot of restaurants that do offer some better for you options, right? I mentioned earlier, we do feel that all food can fit. It's all about balance. And how often are you eating out, right? Like, and if it's frequent, like, how do we start to make those changes where, like, half of your plate includes more fruits, more vegetables? I'm a big vegetable fan, so I'm always going to say even more vegetables, because they just offer a lot of benefits. And so, like, half your plate vegetables, right? If you're going to go out to eat, making sure that you have that 3 to 4 ounces of protein on that plate. If you're going to eat carbohydrate, right, it should be 1/4 of your plate. And so even just visualizing that when you're going out to eat is going to make a big change, right? And I think that tool in itself, that method, could really help people in our community just live, healthier lives. Because even those key components, I always say, start small, right? Yes. Start with just, visualizing that my plate, and then you start to add additional layers, right? Now, when you got that in place, then you start to think about, okay, well, how can I maybe limit other things that are maybe, preventing me to meet those wellness goals, right? So limiting sweetened beverages is another one that we highly encourage, right? Drinking more waters. I saw your water bottle earlier, right? Like, staying hydrated. Like, those are key components that seem very simple, But we forget. I know I'm really guilty. Like I forgot my water bottle in my car, right? And so those are little things that I think we just have to be more conscious about.
Yes, definitely. And I love that you say like making those small changes, because I'm completely in agreement with that. We definitely need to make those small changes so that we make long-term changes, not just something that it's just a 2-week diet or a 2-week change, right? We definitely want to encourage long-term, and at the end of the day, it's a lifestyle. So that's what we want to.
Yes, and I think as people make those small changes, is that they will see results, right? And I think that oftentimes we want to see a quick fix, right? Like a quick things to happen, because that's the society that we live in. But when it comes to health, it's that those small steps that are gradually going to get you to where you need to be at. And I think that is super important. Like, just be patient, have grace on yourself, and you'll see the results.
Yes, definitely. And you mentioned about maybe taking in consideration what we're drinking.
Yes.
Because definitely maybe we put too much sugar on our coffee or the soda, right? So being careful and being mindful of what we're drinking is also really important.
Yes, portion and frequency is going to be key. I always say, there's some things that we, in our culture, we have foods that we really love, right? And so I think it's just important that how do we fit those into a healthy lifestyle, right? So if we really want that sweetened beverage, like fit it in your plan, right? Where it fits, with your vegetables, with your lean sources of protein, and it's not every day. Because I think that's where it starts to become a challenge to your health, when it starts to be more frequently and just really out of control.
Yes, definitely. And talking about culture, and especially here in the Rio Grande Valley, it's not news that we have a high percentage of our population living with diabetes. Yes. Do you have any recommendations on what they can eat, or maybe some things that they should avoid if they have been diagnosed with diabetes?
Yeah, so when it comes to diabetes, there's a couple of components that we always like to focus on. One being carbohydrates, right? Choosing carbohydrates that are more whole grain. These are going to have a lot more fiber. So I always say that, as a dietitian, we always like to encourage more vegetables, but then also more fiber in the diet, because that's really going to help just really, your overall body as far as lowering that blood sugar, but also it's going to help other, promoting other health benefits, right? And so, a simple tip that we give when we're, walking the store with our patients, right? That classroom of ours is that, when you're looking at that food label, especially if it's coming from like a tortilla, a cracker, a chip, a bread, is that we want at least 3 grams of fiber or more. That's going to be your magic number. So, obviously there's additional recommendations that we do give, but I guarantee you that if we start with that, it's really going to help control that blood sugar, throughout the day. Like making sure that we're just getting at least 28 to 30 grams of fiber a day is what we recommend. But, even just that magic number 3 is going to get us a long way.
Well, that's great, and I think that's an actual really practical tip that we can implement on whenever we go to the supermarket and see. And of course, reading the nutritional label is also like a challenge. Some people don't understand. Sometimes I get confused too, so definitely it's
yes, it could be overwhelming, and that's why we want to be that wellness partner for our community, right? Our dietitians are that nutrition expert, and we can really help support, right, as far as like just learning them in a way that is going to be applicable, right? And it's not going to get people confused or overwhelmed, because it is sometimes a lot of information.
Yes, definitely. So can we talk a little bit more about stress eating? Because it is something, especially right now with the current pandemic that we're going through, stress levels are high, anxiety levels are high, and of course sometimes we do tend to overeat or maybe eat less. So
yes, I mean, food is very much a pleasure, right? When we eat food, there's a little signal that goes to our brain and it says, I feel good, right? And the other thing that I want to add, and I mentioned earlier too, is that it is part of our culture too, certain foods, right? And so when we're stressed, like we oftentimes tend to choose foods that are probably high in salt and high in sugar. That's, the science shows that, right? And so, when it comes to stress specifically, what I would recommend is that it's important to recognize those stressors in our lives and, start to incorporate programs that are going to help relieve some of that stress. But when it comes to the nutrition component, I would say being more mindful about those habits, right? Sometimes we recognize it. Sometimes it's other people in our family that recognize it and say, hey, Andie, why are you going back into the fridge, right? Or why are you going back into the pantry? There's some simple tips that we like to recommend. One of them is called the apple test. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
No, I haven't.
And so, and it doesn't have to be an apple, but it really helps with mindful eating. You know, that you always have, whether it's in your home or maybe in your purse, or you know, just over the countertop of your house, like when in your dining area, is that you create an environment what's going to help you just identify some of those unhealthy eating habits, right? And oftentimes it's like stress eating, you know, and so if you ever feel a need to eat, right, and you know that you already ate, you reach for the apple, right? If you're not tempted to eat that apple, right, oftentimes it's not hunger, it's something else, right? Because if you're hungry, you're gonna eat that apple, right? So it starts to identify those cues of like that psychological hunger versus that physiological hunger that really is driven by like actual hunger. And so I know it seems, you know, a little funny or a little interesting, but just that simple component can really help people identify, okay, am I really hungry? Is something else driving that hunger? And setting up yourself for success. So if you are stress eating, recognizing those cues, but then also incorporating more healthy snacks in your house, so that if you do, maybe you choose for like, you know, carrots and hummus instead, or you know,
blueberries and strawberries.
Blueberries or strawberries, yeah, instead of chips, right? I think there's like those easy swaps that you can incorporate that still feel that satisfaction that you're looking for, but it's not going to really challenge your health.
No, and I think that's a really interesting and really practical tip as well. Like, am I really hungry, or this is just that I don't know, I'm feeling stressed, or I'm feeling worried, so I just want to grab something to manage that, which is not actually a very healthy coping mechanism, right? So
no, it's not, and I'm sure you can probably share like, and we focus on like the nutrition strategies, right, to incorporate more mindful eating and even like the stress eating. But I would even add an additional layer, right? I think it's important if there is a problem that, you know, connect with a counselor. And I'm sure you all have so many great benefits for your employees that I would say that oftentimes we do work alongside, you know, a counselor or a psychologist to really help those patients that are really, really struggling. And I think that's another thing that we need to, you know, just pay attention to, because we've all dealt with a very difficult year.
Yes.
You know, it's been very challenging, but you know, we're in the right direction, but it's important to take care of our health.
Yes, definitely. And you did mention about mindful eating. Sometimes we are used to watching the TV while we eat, or maybe text while we eat, but being present and being mindful of what you are actually giving your body really helps as well, right?
Yes, and you know, incorporate, you know, if you know that you're going to be in front of the TV, sometimes you just don't recognize, you know. I often have, you know, patients that say, you know, that they had a bag of chips and then they realize that they ate the whole bag of chips while eating, you know, some show on Netflix, right? Or being on their phone. And so I think in those situations, if you see yourself, those patterns happening, you start to incorporate those better for you snacks. Right, you mentioned the blueberries, right? Having at hand some other snacking, you know, items, so that you're not binging on those unhealthy items.
Yes, definitely, and maybe even preparing some small containers with the portions that you need. That way you can just grab it. Having accessible, it's also helpful.
Yeah, setting up yourself for success is going to be key. And we're our worst enemy, and we know ourselves best, you know. And so if you know that those things are happening, then like you said, meal prepping, right?
Yes.
You know. I know, for example, for breakfast, like I have to do it the night before, right? Because I know in the morning I'm like super busy, you know, with the kids, trying to get out the door, making sure everybody's ready to go. And so for me, I need to make sure that the oatmeal is already prepared. I'm just taking it out of the fridge, you know,
it's ready
some
to go.
walnuts ready, and I'm like eating on the go, right? And so, you know, not that I want people doing that, you know, exactly, but I think we all know our limits, and I think it's important to recognize that you always have an option A and then an option B, right? If you're running late and you can't do something, then maybe that's where you incorporate, like, you know, a protein shake, or maybe it's a healthy bar, like. And I say that because oftentimes we're just starved for time. You know, we're just always go, and I think that a lot of people can relate. But it's really setting yourself for success. It's going to help you stay on track.
Yes, definitely. And like you say, knowing yourself. What is the time, for example, some people, for you it's breakfast, but for other people it might be dinner, that they get super hungry, so now they are not thinking of what is healthy or not. They just want to eat everything, right? So it's just trying to see what is the area or the time that I need to focus, and then hopefully we can make better choices.
Yes, I agree with you 100%.
So for example, for people that are trying to become vegetarian, or maybe they are already vegetarian, what is a good source of protein?
Yeah, so there's obviously with a plant-based diet, the one thing that we do recommend is plant-based protein. So the easiest ones that are going to be like your beans, your lentils, right, your seeds, those are going to be the easiest things that you can incorporate. But then there's other things like tofu that we do also recommend. I know that there's a lot of great vegetarian options that could really fit that protein need, but I would say that from a plant perspective, it would be that, like your beans, your lentils, your seeds, to really help incorporate some of that plant-based proteins.
Definitely. And what do you think about supplemental vitamins? And
yeah, so I always say, as a registered dietitian, we always say food first, but we also understand that whether it's access to fruit and vegetables, or even just not being able to incorporate them in your balanced plate, right? We do recommend a generic just multivitamin to help support just overall health. But like I mentioned, the big piece is always going to be for us is like, eat the rainbow. Make sure that you're eating enough fruits, enough vegetables, because you can get some of those nutrients that way. But as far as supplement, we always say, if again, you know yourself best. If you're not going to be doing that, then make sure that you connect with your physician to kind of help support, that multivitamin daily, so that you could be able to make sure that you're protecting your health.
Yes, definitely. And like you mentioned, contacting your primary care physician, making sure that it's the right thing for you. So in combination with the PCP and the nutritionist or dietitian, it will actually make wonders, I think.
Yes, and just your regular checkups, right? You'd be surprised on how many people don't have a PCP, and so it's important that regular checkup at least once a year, if anything, to make sure that you're checking your blood levels, right? Whether it's sugar, cholesterol, your blood pressure, all of those key components are super important for overall health as well.
Yes, definitely. And Andie, now we're using more technology, everything is going more virtual. Do you have any recommendations for mobile apps or any type of platform that they can use to get healthy tips or healthy eating tips?
Yeah, so when it comes to overall health, there's a few. I know that USDA MyPlate has a really fun app. I like that one because you can incorporate like just different goals when it comes to incorporating more fruits and vegetables. And again, I'm a big fan of like vegetables, so it kind of will flag me like, hey, you didn't, it'll alert me like, hey, you didn't get your serving of vegetables today. And so it kind of helps put things into perspective. But then also there's other really great apps like MyFitnessPal is another one that we like to use a lot with patients because again, it helps identify like your nutritional needs, and then it can also flag you. What I love about it too is that it can also sync with a lot of your other devices.
Fitness trackers.
Yes. So like, nutrition is a big component for us, but then it's also like the physical activity, like how much movement are we doing? That's not our expertise, but we do make sure that it's part of the plan as well. And so I love MyFitnessPal because of that component, right? That it can really incorporate a few different other wellness points that could really help that patient or employee be healthy.
Yes, and I actually have used that, and I do I agree with you. It's the journal of what you have eaten, and then the fitness.
And it helps you be more mindful. I know it's a little tedious at times. I love that you can scan like the foods that you're eating as you're walking and doing your shopping. And then the great thing about it too is that if you are working with a dietitian, is that you can share your diary. And so she can help you like swap better for you items and better for you options, especially and then also makes you wonder like, hey, like I ate chicken 3 days out of the week this week, right? Or I ate whatever, and it kind of helps, again, just be more mindful about some of those diet patterns.
Yes, and also see maybe in the weekend, that's when I'm not doing that good. So I need to do something about it,
yes,
right?
Exactly. It just helps you be more mindful.
Yes, definitely. And one of the things that I think it's important that we mention, because sometimes people think in general that I go to the dietitian to lose weight. Yeah. And that's not necessarily the case. So would you be able to explain a little bit more about that?
Obviously, that's like the first thing that most people will seek a dietitian. We see it quite often, but I mentioned earlier is that our dietitians at HEB really want to be that wellness partner, right? Like we want to work alongside with you, whether it's that nutrition component, whether it's like lifestyles, right? So if they're trying to just eat more healthier. Maybe they're trying to shop better, right? As they're trying to incorporate some healthy options for themselves or their families. And then, you know, even lifestyle when it comes to, you know, maybe following a certain, you know, lifestyle like vegetarian or vegan or low carbohydrate. But then also the disease management piece too,
Definitely.
right? So it's not just weight loss, it's, you know, am I already pre-diabetic? How can I help that patient just, you know, prevent diabetes? Or if you have cholesterol, hypertension, I mean, anywhere nutrition can play a part in your overall health, we can help. And so the list goes on, but I think that, you know, it's just bringing that awareness that we want to help support in any wellness journey that you're pursuing.
Yes, definitely. And you did mention hypertension. Do you have any tips or recommendations for patients that have been diagnosed with high blood pressure?
Yeah, so one of the simplest things, especially when it comes to the nutrition component, is just paying attention to the sodium. Sodium is going to be really key, and then also just overall saturated fat is going to be another one, right? The sodium, because it's been attributed to increase that blood pressure, and so the traditional recommendation is between 23 to 2400 milligrams of sodium a day, and you're like, well, Sandy, how am I going to know that? Well, that's where the tracking really helps, right?
Definitely.
Because it puts that science back in like, okay, well, how much sodium am I really eating in a day? And so it kind of helps quantify that in a day, right, to really help you stay on track. But then also from a fat perspective, right, like cutting back on that saturated fat, because we do also know that high blood pressure can also lead to other health consequences, right, like a heart attack or a stroke. And so we want to make sure that those vessels are healthy and that there's nothing that's going to help, you know, alleviate that risk, block those vessels.
Yes, definitely. And also maybe being mindful of buying fast food, because they are too high, they have high sodium content.
So oftentimes like your restaurant food is going to have a lot more sodium than traditionally. Like at home, at least you know what you're putting on your plate and how much of what, and so it helps you be more in control.
Definitely. Do you have any final recommendations or tips for our audience, just so that they want to start a healthy eating a lifestyle change?
Yes, the one thing that I want to share is just taking that first step. That's going to be my biggest thing, is just taking that first step and taking control of your health. I had a really great leader one time share with me, and it's something that I hold on to every single day, is that the greatest gift that you can give yourself, or me as a dietitian to our community, is back their health. And I think that is super powerful.
Definitely.
Just taking that first step of acknowledging like, hey, you know, I want to live a healthy, you know, prosperous life, and the way that I can do that is just making sure that I'm eating healthy and just really taking care of that body.
Yes, definitely. Self-care and self-love is super important.
Yes.
And be patient with ourselves. Sometimes it's not easy and we're gonna make mistakes, but then we just need to go back and hopefully learn from those mistakes and then continue in our healthy lifestyle path. So
No, thank you, Diana.
thank you so much, Andie. It was a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you would like to learn more about health and wellness, I invite you to subscribe to our channel, Hidalgo County Wellness Program, and stay healthy. Have a beautiful day. Thank you.